Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. We are here live today, Monday evening. We do this thing called GameFace. If you are trying to figure out which braid pattern to put in on your skull so that you will be in fashion, you are on the wrong podcast. If you are trying to get 10 clowns in that small little funny car for the circus, you are on the wrong podcast. However, if you are trying to get an understanding on Bay Area sports, you put your game face on. If you're trying to get an inside in-depth look into national sports, you just put your game face on. I am Richard DeRacer Ewing. I'm with my co-host, Mike Shumann. Mike, what do we got?
Well, I got an old friend joining us today and teammate back in the 80s. Mike Wilson, born 1958, Los Angeles, 6'3", 215, and was a wide receiver back in the day, was big. Went to Carson High School, Washington State. He was selected by the Cowboys in the 9th round in 1981. I'd forgotten he went through training camp with them, and then the Niners picked him up and they released him at the end of training camp. Played 10 years for the Niners, one of 5 players that have 4 Super Bowl rings in the 80s, and we'll name those players. Went on to coach at Stanford, the Raiders, USC, Arizona Cardinals, Cleveland Browns, and last year with the Wildcats of the XFL. Like I mentioned, 4-time Super Bowl champion, won a Super Bowl as a rookie. You know, I hate you even more, Mike. And and then Washington State, that's what I'm going to start you with. How would the LA kid want to end up in Pullman, Washington, in the middle of nowhere?
Hey, let's go back in time and remember that in the late 70s, every team in the Pac-8 back then was running the veer.
That's true.
Off left, handing off right, and there was a quarterback by the name of Jack Thompson who led the nation in passing.
Was he the throwing Samoan?
Throwing Samoan, ended up being the first.
Right. I remember him. Yeah.
So, you know, and a quick story, if I got a minute, I when I was at Carson High School, Gene Vonagel, one of the winningest coaches in California history, he was a veer running team also, man. And I caught 26 passes my senior year for 13 touchdowns. So they throw to me on 3rd down, and everybody's waiting for a pass, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, and they throw up, I jump up and get it. So Randy Moss, you know, I was going up catching them back then. But it was and so when I had a chance to pick a school, I mean, UCLA was Theodis Brown, you know, USC, Charles White.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Muncie was at Cal.
Right.
I couldn't get into Stanford. But Washington State was a good school. And I was All-American in basketball coming out of high school.
All right.
Washington State, George Raveling, you know, in the world of recruiting back then, there wasn't too many two-sports guys. And he's like, hey, come on, you can come out for the team. And I ended up playing as a freshman and starting as a sophomore and gave up basketball. But that's one of the reasons why. But I liked the opportunity to catch more balls. And I went to Washington State.
All right, and your biggest game in the NFL, if I recall, 83 NFC title game, you had 8 catches, 2 touchdowns, and a losing effort. And like I say, a couple sports star. We'll get to our relationship in a second. Real quick, though, last week, hate to say it, I picked against the Raiders and the Niners. So, and we're not at the game this year, but you can still be in on the action at Bet Online. From game spreads and totals to team, player, coaching props, Bet Online gives you more options to wager than any place online. There's always the online casino as well. It never closes. So head to betonline.ag today. Take advantage of all the great sign-up bonuses. Again, that's betonline.ag and sign up today. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. And I'm sure you could get another bet now in the NBA Finals after Jimmy Butler went off the other night to make it 2-1. Are you a Laker fan or Clipper fan?
You just brought up, I used to be a Laker boy when I was growing up in Inglewood, California.
Okay.
And that was way back in the day, but I've always been a Laker fan. When I was coaching with the Cleveland Browns, LeBron James was there. And so I'm a big LeBron James fan. I've always been a Laker fan. And they gave one away last night, but I think they just wanted to, for me, it's another game to watch. So it should be good to watch tomorrow night and see how they come out, because I'm a firm believer in, and Mike, you know this, winning championships is, you got to bring your A game on the big day.
Now, let me ask you something, Mike, because, I've been a Niner fan and I don't know if I've even told Mike, but I've been a Niner fan since the days of Gene Washington. I go back that far.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and I remember watching you. I even remember watching Shu when he played. But
Yeah.
Shu goes on and on. He talks about how good he was.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you now. Was Shu as good as he says he is? I mean,
Shu was the man. I mean, to be honest,
really? Okay, wait a minute.
I've always, and I know you don't, but Shu, that you taught me the ropes now. I mean, when I came in, I was a rookie, and it was Shu. Really, Shu talked to me probably more than Freddie Solomon and Dwight Clark. So and that's not how veterans are in today's game. Back then, you brought a rookie in and you helped them, even though they might be in a position to take your job at one time. But that was just the culture that the Niners provided. So I appreciated Shu and, all that. And you left and went to Tampa, am I correct?
Well, they tried to sneak me through waivers, remember?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And on Thursday, Tampa Bay claimed me. We played them on Sunday. And they kept me the rest of the year. And then I asked to be traded back. Mike came from Dallas as a rookie. And Matt Boza from Cal had made the team. Bill didn't feel confident with two rookies as their third and fourth guy. So he brought me back from Tampa. He cut Matt Boza, who went on to the Colts. And every time I see Matt, he says, "How's my Super Bowl ring?" But Mike was unusual at the time for his size. He's about 6'4", 215. Dwight was the same thing. Bill loved that big X receiver to move the chains. And he liked that speed. He had Chip Myers at Cincinnati, who was 6'5", about 220 at X. And Isaac, I can't remember his last name, Isaac Curtis. So he liked that combination. I think he saw that in Mike when he brought him in. And when Mike and Dwight came in, I thought they were both tight ends. 6'3", 220, 215, 220. Back then, that was a tight end, So, but anyway, a great career. And let me ask you, there's nothing like the first time, your rookie year, you're just kind of running around. There's nothing like the first time you do anything. And we won that first Super Bowl. Yeah. But that 84 team was probably the best all-around team of all those four Super Bowl teams. And then back-to-back in 89 and 90. Did one or the other of those Super Bowls mean more to you? I know they're all separate, but did one mean more?
I think, as I reflect and go back in the day, I mean, the first Super Bowl was amazing. First of all, for me to even make an NFL team after Dallas broke my heart and cut me.
Yeah.
Luckily, Mike knows these names. These are names from the past. I mean, Billy Wilson called me. Sam Weiss and Bill worked me out on the field.
Head coach,
and I was flying on a round trip ticket that day. I think they were just getting a roster set if they had to bring somebody else in. And had a great, in my opinion, one of my best workouts and one-on-ones. And I sat in that locker room for 5 hours waiting for them to make a decision. And they cut Spider Gaines, and Matt Boza was there also. And who was James Owens? Was that James Owens?
James, and he got traded to Tampa.
He got traded somewhere in that whole process. But for me, here I am. I came to the Niners, and there's Freddie Solomon and Dwight Clark. Both of them rest in peace. And there's Shuey.
Wow.
So we went out and handled our business. But for me, it was definitely a different formation, different style of playing because I'd never lined up as a tight end, and Bill had Tiger personnel, which was two tights, and you put an X in there and you line up and shoot. You got the matchup on the linebacker. So I picked up that offense real quick and tried to, stay gainfully employed as long as I could.
Well, when I think about it, you, Ronnie, Eric, and Carlton, all rookies, right?
Oh, yeah. I came in with a rookie class of probably the most number of rookies that had, made a roster, but
and won a Super Bowl their first year.
Who would have ever thought? We played Dallas in the regular season. We beat them. Then that NFC Championship game, and we all know about the catch. But it was a great year. And to answer your question, I mean, the first one could never be replaced, except for in Detroit.
I know that was the only thing.
Detroit, ice on the ground. I mean, literally, we stayed in the hotel and played Pac-Man back then. That was.
Well, we got to be realistic. When it comes to Detroit, there's not much to do there. So
that's true. That was true.
That time
but hey, it was a great experience, and I know Mike could tell you the same thing. I mean, the whole city was engaged, and it was a totally unexpected, And we went out and handled our business. That was a fun experience. And the next year we struggled, but then after that, we got on the roll.
Okay, we just saw, really, a game that we can literally just pick apart as far as, what went wrong, what someone should have did, the decision making on coaching, concerning, the Niners and the Eagles. And one of the things I've had to listen to just like over the last week, which really drove me nuts, is because, Mullen had this great game the week before. It's like all of a sudden, oh, well, you know what? Mullen's got a chance to take Garoppolo's down. I'm like, are you people what? It's like at some point you look at people and go, okay, look, just because marijuana is legal doesn't mean you have to smoke it. All right. Some of these
There's an analogy.
You know what I'm saying? Some of these people with these thoughts. I mean, come on. And this is the thing. Maybe it's because I'm just old school and I see things differently based on from when I watched you play and shoe, and the way things were done when coaches acclimated certain people or certain players into certain positions. Do you see that kind of whole formulation changing now based on what's going on? Or do you think it's something that coaches are still holding on to because they can see really the benefit of it?
For me, I just know that, a system's a system. And in today's football, even in shoe play, I mean, the starting guy got most of the reps. But I was fortunate in my playing time. There was Joe and Steve was sitting on the bench for a couple of years, and that's rare. In today's game, because of free agency and constant movement of players, I'm not that familiar with, once you got past Jimmy G, who the next guy up was going to be. And I think he can step in and do things. And if he played well in the first game when Jimmy got hurt, a team's got a week to prepare for you. And that's the one thing. And the beauty of football, professional football, is defensive coaches are smart, man. They'll come and figure out some stuff. And that chemistry that happened, kind of spontaneity on that game, you have to come in and replace. It isn't always there the second game. So, it was a surprise for me to see the Niners lose last night. The one thing the Niners historically have prided themselves on being consistent. And hey, next man up, you go out and ball and you find a way to win. And last night was, very humbling experience for him.
I think they were looking ahead to the Miami Dolphins and overlooked the Eagles. Mullins had a 26.9 quarterback rating, the lowest in the season this year.
Mm-hmm.
He had 3 turnovers, a pick 6, an interception, and a fumble, led to 17 points. And Kittle comes back, catches 15 passes, 183 yards, and a touchdown. But he dropped the 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
Had he not dropped that, they could have kicked a field goal in that last drive, tied the game, and gone to overtime. So the one we wanted him to catch, he dropped. So what's your thoughts on Kittle? You've seen him play.
Hey, first of all, I thought about it, and Kittle wearing that number 85, going way back.
Your number, right?
Vernon Davis, Greg Clark.
Right.
There's been some good guys who had that number, and but amazing. That guy's worth the price of admission. I watch him play, and he came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden he has been very consistent. Teams are preparing for him, and he still comes out and brings his A game, and it's pretty phenomenal that. And I remember this as a player myself. You can catch 15 balls for X amount of yards, and everybody talks about the one drop you had.
Yeah.
My biggest pet peeve as a play a game, catch 4, 5, or 6 balls, and have a touchdown. And my brother, hey man, what happened on that one you dropped? So that was unfortunate. It happens. Edelman tonight in the other game for New England dropped a couple of balls, which is really uncharacteristic of him. But I think the guy is, definitely, as long as he can stay healthy, is definitely, you don't want to say it too soon, but he's definitely got the ability to be a Hall of Famer and be one of the greatest to play the game. And I love his run after the catch. I mean, you don't see that as much with tight ends, but he's the guy who, hey, he catches it, and then you wake up and look at him. So I think he's amazing, and I was glad to see the Niners sign him, and he'll be a 49er for a long time.
Yeah. So I basically do this every week, Mike. We've had a few former players of the Niners, and also we've had a couple of guys who used to play for the Giants on. But Shu kind of started me with this question where, I ask everybody that's on this one question where I ask you and I say, okay, you played for 10 seasons. Obviously, you've seen different, defensive backs, linebackers, what have you, that you had to face. But out of your career, what was that one person that just got underneath your skin? Every time you met, you knew, okay, look, this guy's going to be a barrel to deal with.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, we had so much pride and preparation and detail to our offense that, I really didn't experience much versus another team's defensive back. I tell you, practice all day against Eric Wright. Eric was probably one of the best corners.
Yeah.
At the line, and you think you got him, and all of a sudden when the ball comes, there's Eric. He bats it down. Respect for both of them, Ronnie and Eric. Ronnie Lott and Eric Wright were starting at the same time, but Eric was a tough guy. He was a little bit thinner, so I could beat him at the line, but he'd always recover. But fortunately, Eric did the same thing on game day against the other opponent. So I will say this, we played against some great corners in our day, and I look forward to the challenge and competing with them. And I feel that's why we had such a winning tradition with the Niners. We never were, a guy, Darrell Green was very good, but, we came out and handled our business, and especially between Montana and the receiving corps.
All right. Mullins played so bad, they brought in C.J. Beathard, who's been buried. Just a lot of people thought he should have been cut years ago. He looked like Joe Montana in that drive that took him down to score, just slinging it. I think he was 5 for 5. And then took him down basically for that Hail Mary that ball floated up there for a while. So if Jimmy G can't go, we'll know probably Wednesday, Thursday this week against the Dolphins. Who do you start? You're a former coach. Do you go with Mullins, who struggled one game, or do you try this other kid out?
I will say this. I know right now as a staff, coaches they have their opinion.
Right.
And so that comes back to the head coach and the quarterback coach. I mean, I think they have their mind. It's rare that you go in and it's okay, let's watch them practice and let's make a decision. But I'm not in that locker room or in that meeting room. So, but based on what we saw last night, you with the lack of experience that both young men have, that you probably would go with the guy who had success in the last game. So time will tell, and I'll be watching. But as Niners, after going to, they need to put some games together. And who they got this week? Is they in Seattle?
No, they got Miami.
Oh, they're Miami down going to Miami. What a flight!
No, it's here. It's at.
They come to us, okay. And normally I come to a game, but I should have,
No, I know this year. That's normally when I see you mostly. All right, those two young receivers, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk had the hurdle for the touchdown, and Mike and I were talking. Takes one time to get hit like that in the wrong place, and you'll never leave the ground like that again. He got away with it. And I think they both have great upside, good young receivers. And Shanahan uses his receivers because they only kept 4 back when we played. Now they keep 7.
Yeah.
But they use them in motion, jet sweeps. It's more of a weapon than a pure wide receiver. So what's your thoughts on these two? I know you haven't seen a ton of them, but good young receivers to look forward to, I think.
Yuka is amazing. I mean, you look at the league, around the league, and not to go beyond the 49ers, but, man, there's an influx of young talent.
Yeah.
And bringing their A game, making plays. And then you look at the, A.J. Greens and the Julio Jones, and you see those guys, I hate to say it, kind of passing the torch, because these young boys are really playing well. And so Samuel last year, I thought was amazing. And I know he's coming off injuries and now is playing back in the loop and made a few plays last night. But those two young guys, I mean, you got to build your team around something. And as long as you got the playmaking ability and the quarterback to get you the ball, the sky's the limits. Obviously, we saw tonight Tyreek Hill with Kansas City. I think he is, believe it or not, at one time, people probably would pass on him because of his size and stature. Right. Sure, everybody's looking for a guy like him because he is probably one of the number 1 receivers in the league right now in playmaking ability and tough. And, he's had a few injuries, but I like the young talent. I think it's just a matter of the Niners getting back to their offensive game plan, allowing, with the jet sweep and a lot of the bubble screens and a lot of the crossing routes. I mean, it's really a matter of O-line giving that quarterback time to throw the ball, which is key. And you can have explosive plays down the field.
So one of the things that I noticed, and Mike and I was talking about it earlier, was that it just seems with San Francisco, one of the things that is a deficiency for them right now is that when they're, in the middle of a game and they have a situation where there is a concern, okay, that they don't make adjustments, okay, in games, okay. We saw this again this week. It's like they came out in the second half. I didn't see a lot of adjustments from the secondary on defense. I kind of feel like Robert Saleh just let the game plan continue, even though there should have been some concern because of the way, Philadelphia came down and scored. The fact they're able to put together a 2-point conversion and they really didn't have an answer to stop it. Do you think that's something that they should probably look at?
In respect of the coaching, itself, it's tough to, second guess and question. That's always easy to do. I've coached with 5 NFL teams, so I know how it is. You would think, first and foremost, with a lot of quarterbacks in this league, is he a mobile quarterback? Can he move and run? And how do you take away their strengths? And that was the one thing that I saw, what's his name last night, the Phillies quarterback still running around and really making plays with his legs. And with that being said, I didn't see, the extra pressure or a lot of blitzing going on that normally will, a quarterback who's not mobile. I mean, you see, last Monday night when you saw Jackson and our guy from Kansas City. I mean, whoa, that's a whole nother monster. But you would think that, once you lock in on them and see what they're doing, what their game plan is, you could kind of tweak things and make things go. But as a former Niner, I'm going to respect that they have had success and now they have to go and look at the tape this morning and hopefully you learn from this game and be ready for Miami coming in town this week.
Well, just thinking about it, we went from you as a player to a coach. You played for Bill Walsh and George Seifert, I think, towards the end,
yes.
Right? And so when you became a coach, you had this ultimate respect as a player for your head coach, if he was a good one. How tough was that transition to be a 4-time Super Bowl champion, to go into, like you were Cleveland, I know, for a while? Is it the same sort of thing as a coach? If you have a lack of respect for your head coach, does that make it do your job? We're not picking anybody's name.
Right. No, I'm with you. And
but you know what I mean? That segue.
Bill Walsh called me and asked me to come coach with him at Stanford. So my first job of coaching.
Oh, okay.
Stanford, and he had me coach wide receivers and tight ends. And so he said, Mike, hey, I'm going to teach you everything. And that first year, Keena Turner was on that staff. Billy Ring was on that staff. Tom Homo was on the staff.
Damn.
Some young guys, and nobody thought Bill would come back. But when he called me, I really hadn't planned on getting into coaching, but I could not say no to the genius. And so it was a nice experience. And, that same year, George Seifert called me and honestly asked me to come and coach with the Niners. The following year, Tom Homo left and went to the Niners. I stayed at Stanford with Bill because I and Mike, you got it. I mean, I wasn't very comfortable wanting to coach Jerry Rice and John Taylor, who are
after playing with them.
That was just a little different.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I still am looking for the opportunity to go and work with the 49ers and coach with them, but it hasn't happened. So, but it was Bill made it an easier transition. I left there with the Raiders. Now that is a conversation you want to have, Mike. I think you used to cover the Raiders back in the day.
I did. I was covering when you were there.
But
because college players have to listen to you. Pros,
Al Davis was.
Right,
I mean, it was like from going across the bay. Al Davis was totally different. It was a wholly different system. And Mike White was the head coach. Quickly from there, went to USC with John Robinson. Then went to Arizona with Dennis Green. So luckily I got exposed to coaching with Bill. And then once you get into it, it's all about, and my philosophy has always been about productivity with your players. And I had Tim Brown, I had a bunch of RJ Soward. I had a bunch of talented guys at SC, and then went to Arizona, and then got Fitzgerald and Bowden. And those two guys, first two receivers in history to have over 100 catches and 1,400 yards each. So, I had some success in my coaching. And then, of course, when I left Cleveland, I had Josh Gordon, who was, great talent, but we know the rest is history.
Yeah, off-field issues.
He played the whole year, and the following and I left, we got fired, and then the rest is history. But coaching is, is definitely, it's a lot easier if you played and you had experience. So there's nothing that I couldn't prepare an athlete for that I hadn't experienced myself.
I think what's also refreshing too, Mike, about you, listening to you talking about, the possibility of going over and coaching for the Niners, because I always wonder about this. You get guys that, spend certain time, as an athlete in certain, professions, whether it be soccer, baseball, basketball, whatever, and you don't see them for a while, and you kind of wonder, it's like, okay, what is this guy's, competitive spirit like today? And just listening to you, I can tell yours has not diminished. You still you still believe, hey, if you got an opportunity, you could probably either assist or show somebody something that they've probably never seen before and can help them develop. And that's a fine quality in a coach.
And let me comment on that. I think and Mike has been through a lot of people who have coached him. I've always had a philosophy of, it's not me, it's about the athlete going on the field. And I've always gotten conversations where it's about the player's performance. The performance speaks for the athlete and performance speaks for who's coached him. There's a lot of eye coaches out there who wants to have as much publicity as him. And I think as a former player, that's unimportant to me. I mean, for me, it was just, I had Bowden and Fitzgerald, and Larry was as green. And so I said, okay, let me teach this guy how to develop. And he ended up going to the Pro Bowl his second year. That first year I had him, Bowden went to the Pro Bowl and they alternated. But it's really about teaching the guy, and Mike knows this, just stance and start, and not just building an aptitude that you are the smartest football player on the field. And I think as a 49er wide receivers, we knew what the tight end, running backs, what the play and the scheme was that allowed us to run a clear route and know why you're running it, so that, Jerry can catch the ball or Mike Shumann can catch the ball because I have to take the safety out of there. I mean, it's about aptitude and being the smart football player. And that's what I see in some athletes that have all this potential and they just sometimes don't get it. And that's disappointing, but hopefully, guys can maximize their career and be the best player they can be. And but when I see a guy go out there balling consistently, he's doing his homework, watching tape, and showing up to play. And I respect that. And hey, the game has changed now, Mike. We both have been out there watching practice. It's not the same. I went to the Niners training camp last year, and it was like country club. And every generation before us, as me and you, Mike, as players, they say that our camp was tougher, but hey, these guys are, they got to get in game shape and go out and play. And we system with Bill Walsh where we didn't hit each other every day, and that was shunned upon him with all the other NFL teams. But in hindsight, New Orleans and New York and all those teams that were just pounding each other to death, they could have it. Hey, we were in our underwear and we came in and we're ready to go on Sunday, and that's all that mattered.
All right, quick coaching story. Mike was at USC, and my news director at ABC's son wanted to go to film school there, but he also wanted to walk on the football team. Mike, I don't know if you remember this. His name was Dylan Weiss.
Oh, yeah.
And, so Dylan tried out that day, and I was working with him, showing some things, this, that, and the other. So he's running a route from Mike, and Mike just stopped. Dylan told me, he says, "Where'd you learn that?" And like Mike had seen it before, and he goes, "Only one guy could have taught you that," kind of thing. He goes, "Where'd you learn that?" And Dylan was like, he didn't know what to say,
Right.
It's like, what do I say? And he goes, and Mike said, "Where'd you learn that?" And he goes, Mike Shumann. And Mike, he still said, "I knew it," so I don't even remember what it was, but and he ended up making the team. And then late in the season, I called Mike. I said, "Can you put him in the game and throw him?" And sure enough, he did. Here I am watching on TV. So just a great thrill as a former teammate of his to watch him as coaching. And Dylan has never forgotten it. And he says, hello.
Good deal. Yeah, I remember that distinctly. I remember the game where and back then, we weren't on top of our game. Now that we were competing. So when we had an opportunity to get on top of a team and have a chance to get some other players in, hey man, go in there and let's throw you a hitch or a slant, and
right.
Because he worked his butt off, in all due respect. I mean, you can some of those walk-ons and free agents, those guys really give it their all. And sometimes they're just not talented enough, but sometimes, hey, they just need an opportunity to play.
All right, quickly, I just want to ask about, Tennessee Titans. They had 19 people tested positive.
Oh, shoot. 9
players. Tonight, Kansas City's playing New England and Cam Newton, and from sources, Cam went down to Boston and had it at a restaurant and ended up maybe picking it up down there. But because they only had him and a practice squad player, they get to play. Tennessee has 9 players. They had to postpone their game till 4 or 5 weeks away.
Yeah.
This is going to start happening. Do you think, number one, the league should have tried to start? And number 2, will they be able to finish?
You know, so far it's been a good start, and obviously, you know, we talked about it earlier. I'm a big Laker fan, and I was impressed with the NBA and how they handled the bubble.
Yeah.
And I think that you know, the NFL is a little bit different. Obviously, there's not a bubble and they're all in one spot, but to me, once again, it becomes being a professional athlete, a guy taking ownership and his role on that team, especially with this pandemic out there right now, that he should literally have his own bubble. Go to practice, go home, come back. Yeah. I mean, to go and have dinner or to think you can go to a fundraiser like the Raiders did.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's got to, you know, say, hey, man, you know, my philosophy even in my life today is I can only get this if somebody gives it to me. Otherwise, I'm fine. And so I really try not to, you know, put myself in that situation. And I think as a pro athlete and for those who opted in, that's part of the responsibility. For those who opted out, they've opted out. But I think I'm hoping that the NFL could, you know, have a successful season and end up, you know, going all the way to the Super Bowl. But time will tell. I mean, you're right. Once it hits, it can hit hard. And but I'm hoping that the young men are, you know, doing their best to take care of themselves. And, you know, like I said, you know, it's a controlled environment. I'm sure the Niners are on lockdown and going to the stadium. And so you just got to do your part. And, you know, once again, some kids are in school in different states. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things that can get you, but I hope that they're able to keep the season alive. And thank goodness I enjoy the entertainment, because there was a minute there was no sports on TV.
I know.
For me, you know, there's 2 on tonight, and, you know, so I'm enjoying it. And hopefully these athletes, you know, are doing what they do, what they love. And you see the passion on the field. And for those who opted out, you don't even hear the names mentioned, except New England have more players opt out than any other. However, but, you know, so I wish them well, and hopefully the league can stay, you know, no major outbreaks, and control it and continue to play.
Well, Mike, first of all, I want to tell you, thank you very much for taking time with us today. Mike Wilson, 4-time Super Bowl champion. And this is yet another episode of GameFace where we feature 2 Super Bowl champions in the same episode. Guys, this can't get any better than this. So, Mike, it was a pleasure having you on today. Feel free to come back on. We'd love to have you back on with us. You have been watching and listening to GameFace on the Bleed Talent Network. I am Richard the Razor Ewing. I'm with my co-host, Mike Shumann, and I'm with 4-time Super Bowl champion Mike Wilson. Tune in next week for another episode. But if you do, you better have your GameFace on.
Say hello to your lovely bride, Mike.